Danny, welcome to the show, man.
What's up, brother? Good to be here.
I can't believe you haven't been on the show. So I've always had a rule of like, if you speak at my event, you have to be on my podcast first. But you've already been a part of one of my virtual events. We've spoken at another event together, Adam Shibley's event together. And now you're speaking in May at my event and you've already been locked in. So I'm like, I got to get you on the show, man. But I'm excited to dive into your story a little bit deeper, right? I know I've gotten to know you over the last couple of years and love what you've built and love what you're all about and your dedication to your health, your family, and so much more. And we're going to get into so many great topics. So why don't we take a second and have you introduce yourself to my audience? Who's Danny Vega today? And then we'll unpack how you got there.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, don't worry about the podcast thing. I had a guy that I finally had on after 4 years of the podcast, and I wrote his name on a list before I even launched the podcast. So that's just how these things happen sometimes. So yeah, I was born and raised in Miami. I was always into athletics, and even early on as a kid, I was always in after school care because my parents were working really hard, and I had this guy that took care of us in the school program who was a bodybuilder. And I would just watch this guy in awe. Like he would do pull-ups. I would just try to do pull-ups with him in the playground. And so I guess that was the beginning of me really getting into like building muscle. Then when I was 9 years old, I had like anger issues, and football was just like an awesome outlet. And by the time I hit high school, I knew that I wanted to play college. So I was the leading rusher in Dade County, Miami-Dade County. So like I had a bunch of schools giving me looks. And then Columbia came, and I didn't even know who Columbia University was at the time. Like I thought maybe DC, like District of Columbia.
Yeah.
And then they invited me to some information session, and I saw that it was in New York City. I took my visit there, and I was just obsessed. So I went to go play at Columbia. Obviously not the biggest powerhouse for football, but I always tell people I learned almost as much out of the classroom than, in the classroom. And I was the teacher's pet in the weight room. My strength and conditioning coach, I loved him. And my sophomore year, he left me to go to UNC. He was there for a few years, and then he went to he was the head strength coach at Minnesota Timberwolves. And we had stayed in touch. And I was just like, I call him up, and now he's been in the game for like 10, 15 years already. And I'm like, I'm going to UF. I'm going to get my master's. So I got my master's at University of Florida. And I just walked into the weight room, and at the time, the strength coach, I was like, look, I played college football. I'm here for my master's in human performance. I'll be a fly on the wall. I'll clean the mirrors. I'll do whatever. Just give me a chance. I want to learn. And he gave me a chance. And by the way, my strength coach, when I called him, he was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? It's funny because he was in the league for like, several years, and he ended up, his wife kept popping out kids. And after a while, he just finally got out of the game because, it really is like a way of life. And so I worked my way up at UF. About 8 months into it. The strength coach tells me that there's a position opening up in the basketball facility. You're going to have more responsibility. They want you to design the programs for men's and women's golf and men's and women's tennis, and they'll even start paying you. And so that was awesome. And then we won the national championship in basketball about a month before I was graduating with my master's. And that's what got me, the head basketball strength coach recommended me to the assistant head coach there, who got the coaching job at VCU. So after we won the national championship, there's always a mix up. And so we went to VCU, man. It was awesome. I was, 25 years old, and I was at where I wanted to be. And, we just did so many things historically at VCU. We beat Duke in the tournament. They wrote an article about me in the Richmond Times-Dispatch. And, after being there for like a year and a half, I just was thinking about, like, man, I'm never gonna financially get to where I want to be doing this. And plus, at the time I was single, but I just knew that it takes like a special woman to be with a coach, because it's just like they always say it's not a career, it's a way of life. You're with the team on Thanksgiving, having Thanksgiving dinner. You're with them all the time, and you're not even working 9 to 5. You're kind of with the coaching staff all the time. And then even traveling was a crazy thing because I had my bags packed to go to Columbia for homecoming once. And since I was the dean of discipline, I had my bags packed in the car. I was going to drive up, and the head coach calls me and says, so and so missed his study hall. I need you to run him tomorrow. And I was like, all right,
Ugh.
that's it. And there's that trip is canceled. He would have never known about it. I didn't tell him. So, so that's why I came back home, and I was like, I'm gonna go make money now. So I started doing pharmaceutical sales, did that for about 3 years.
That's a racket too, man. That's a ton of hours and a ton of travel and everything else in between.
Yeah, and plus, and then just from a value standpoint, like I realized after 3 years that I wasn't really adding value. So the next step was medical device. Like at least I had the relationships with my doctors that I worked with. They're like, yeah, get into medical device. So then now I'm in the OR. Now I'm wearing scrubs every day, getting paid much better, and
Yeah.
I loved it. I got really well trained, and I did that for another 8 years. And but last 2 years were the hardest, even though I made the most money because in 2016, I had been powerlifting since 2013. I got in the top 25 in the country in my weight class. And then I was injured and I was trying to get healthy. And my buddy kept telling me about this ketogenic diet. And so fast forward to 2016, I started that diet, and man, I had so many things that were healing. Like I had already lost some weight, so I knew that I needed to lose weight because I had a knee injury that I need to work on, and then dude, just productivity was better that whole year. I just felt so much better. And so 2 months after, in typical, my wife always says, this is what you do. Like I'll always find like a mentor or somebody, and I'll just like try to learn from him. So the same thing happened with keto. I found this guy, Brian, who was, he had, Keto Evangelist was the name of the podcast. Back then there was like maybe 3 or 4 podcasts on keto, and now there's a million.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how
And
many are there now? Like it's unreal.
dude, I don't even know half the influencers and people that are in keto now. Like I don't know who they are. Um, but I mean, there's still like a core of people like that I'm really close with that have been doing this for a while. So I started the ketogenic athlete in August of 2018, and in August of 2016, sorry. Um, 2017, I already started to feel, because I was doing stuff on the side, I was coaching people, started to see that I was getting clients all around the world. And so in 2017, I decided I was going to leave my job, saved for a year. In 2018, started Fat Fueled Family. And so my focus is mostly, of course, the athlete and, trying to build muscle, trying to help people understand the nuance of building muscle and maintaining lean body mass and getting cut on a ketogenic diet. But then, of course, also the family aspect of it, because a lot of people are getting really healthy with this diet, and then they start realizing, oh crap, my kids are still eating like crap. So that's why we started Fat Fueled Family in 2018, started the podcast, and that's been what we've been doing for the last 4 years now.
Yeah, dude, there's so much to unpack there. Like, first of all, like talking about like the strength and conditioning and all that stuff. I was actually neighbors with the strength and conditioning coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. And the only time he was home was when guys like Donovan McNabb and some of the O-line would come to his house for dinner. Like, so even when he was home, these guys, and I remember looking out my window and just seeing these huge dudes just walking into his house. I was like, Jesus, it was unreal. But like, it truly is, you become married to your career. And I love the fact now that, and we'll get to this here in a second, but like, you're so ingrained in the family way of living and raising the kids right and being a good husband and being a good father, that it's a completely different shift from where you were, which I absolutely love. Now, I want to do a deep dive on what is the keto diet really quick, right? Because obviously a lot of people see it and they're like, this is crazy. You had mentioned you're the dean of discipline. I feel like the keto diet, you need to be super disciplined, like, because you stray a little bit and it's just not going to work out for you. So what are some of the things that you do to teach your clients discipline when they go to adopt the keto diet? Because I think that's the first step.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is you want to mentally prepare people for this first month, which is usually why people quit, because they're just not mentally prepared for that first month. So we know that when you drop your carb intake, your insulin drops, right? So when your insulin drops, that signals your kidneys to excrete a lot of fluids. And that's why a lot of the time you'll hear people say, well, you're losing all this weight, it's just water weight. Technically, that's kind of true in the first like week or so. Unfortunately, that's also the time when you're losing a lot of electrolytes like potassium, sodium, magnesium. So, number one, when you want to start the ketogenic diet, definitely supplement with magnesium and potassium. Definitely put lots of salt on your food. Get rid of that old idea that salt is bad. We have such weird recommendations where we have our potassium recommendations and sodium recommendations are completely inverted. So like it should be much more sodium and much less potassium.
Hmm.
And that's a lot of that is because of, high blood pressure is a big issue. The problem is that, when you eat carbohydrates, for example, 1 gram of carbs, you're going to hold on to about 3 grams of fluid. So yeah, if you're holding on to fluid from having these really high carb meals, which always happen, not always, but most of the time, because of the composition of our Western diet, it's high fat and high carb, which is like the worst possible thing you can do. So now you have all this inflammation, you have all this sodium. So it kind of makes sense, but instead of saying cut your sodium, let's say, eat better. But that's a whole other like, soapbox that I can get on. So because that's like these recommendations, man, they're brutal. But so first of all, definitely you have to make sure that your electrolyte intake is good. Number two, if you really want to try to give this a shot, I would say that at least 6 weeks to even 12 weeks, like a month and a half to 3 months, is what you want to try to do, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to hit some level of fat adaptation, which just means our biggest problem is that we're insulin resistant. We don't transport energy properly and efficiently because we've been eating carbs for so long. So
Yeah.
once you do a ketogenic diet for like a solid 3 months, now you start to have this metabolic flexibility where you can burn more fat. And even if you reintroduce carbs, you're gonna keep that metabolic flexibility as long as you're staying active. The problem is, you have to the discipline thing, I think a lot of it has to do with the way we look at things. So usually, um, a lot of the time people are going to try this diet because they're trying to lose some weight.
Yeah, they
I
want
would
to lose
say,
weight fast. Like that's kind of like
yeah,
what the media when they talk about keto, they're like, you want to drop weight fast, get on the keto diet. But then the issue
yeah.
with that is they do it for the month, they drop the pounds, and then they eat a donut and then 9 donuts, and then they've gained more weight back than they've lost.
Yeah, that's a major problem. And the other thing too is that, what people don't understand is that the more you lower your carbs, you start to gain a metabolic advantage. So like there's a really good study that shows like they had these people lose 12% of their body weight, and then at maintenance they tested to see like how many calories would these people burn with 60% carbs, 40% carbs, and 20% carbs. And as you lowered the carbs, every 20%, you saw an uptick in the amount of calories that you burned a day. So those people that were at 20% were burning on average, like I think it was like 200 something more calories a day. So the first thing I would say is, well, besides the electrolytes, is don't start a ketogenic diet in caloric restriction, because your body, what ketones do in the cell, it's kind of like sitting down in your car and revving the engine. The amount of energy going in is nowhere near the amount of energy going out, because you got a lot of extra heat that's generated, which is good, which
Yeah.
also over time it starts to do what's called the beiging effect of your fat. So most of us have like white fat, which is useless. It's stored, it's not good to burn. Babies, for example, are born with tons of brown fat. That's why if you have a baby next to you, they always feel like little heaters because they're
Yeah.
full of brown fat. So that's why babies, they don't get cold either. It's crazy. And so what the ketogenic diet does, among several other things, is it's going to help you burn more fat. So for that reason, I would say also start with, give yourself a little bit of leeway. Don't start right away doing intermittent fasting and ketogenic diet. Have a good breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The other thing too, I would say, I'm a type of guy who says that you should, number one, you should eat real food. So I had a guy who's been a buddy of mine, powerlifter. He just texted me today and he's like, dude, I finally gave in. I'm doing the ketogenic diet. You know, I'm feeling weaker. It's my fourth day. And I'm like, dude, look, listen, just understand this. Like, you have to go through this little period, number one. And so I'm giving him some advice, and he's like, should I count total carbs or net carbs? Because that's a thing too. So the reason why I say eat real food is that if you eat real food, it's okay to count net carbs. That means that, you know, if you're actually tracking, and let's say the total amount of carbs that you have is like 60, but then you brought on like 20 grams of fiber, the net carbs would be 40. Now,
Right.
I differ in what I recommend if that person's eating a bunch of, because now, of course, everybody's capitalizing on the keto trend. So
Yeah.
everything has a keto, you know, title on it that you're,
Yeah. And everything says net carbs, even when it's all processed crap.
yeah. And so that stuff is going to tear up your gut. A lot of those sugar alcohols and even like non-caloric sweeteners that aren't sugar alcohols there is a metabolic response. A lot of the time it's not exactly a non-impact carb. So I would say also definitely stick to real food. Keep it simple, man. There's so many, like when I first started this, dude, like there were nowhere near as many recipes and simple things. Don't worry about the intermittent fasting. I had a guy, one of my clients that I've been working with him since October, and that guy, he's like, what about intermittent fasting? I'm like, don't worry about it. It's like baked in. It'll start showing up in December. He started to like fast longer, you know?
Yeah.
So don't
Like it
try
almost
to,
happens automatically because of how your body's processing the food.
yeah, you start to get much more reliable hunger signals because there's not that blood sugar roller coaster. Other than that, you know, from an athlete standpoint, from someone who's going to the gym, I don't hear this as often as I used to, thank God. But when I got into this, you know, keto was getting popular sort of again because it kind of got popular sort of with Atkins, even though that wasn't exactly keto. It was just like, don't eat carbs at whatever, you know,
Right.
whatever you want to do. Just eat a bunch of hot dogs and, you know, and
That was like eat 47 pieces of bacon.
yeah.
Just don't have a pancake.
Exactly. And of course people were like, I love it. But there's like, if there's any issues with meat, which, you know, I love meat as evidenced by the shirt, that
Yeah, if you're listening to this, he's wearing a blue shirt with just raw meat all over it.
yeah, it's a bunch
Steaks.
of ribeyes. Actually, I think these are ribeyes.
I love it.
But when we do see issues in the research, it's usually with processed meats like sausage and bacon. So like let's just use a little bit of that discernment. Like, come on, did you really think that you were gonna achieve optimal health by just eating bacon? I mean, I'm not saying that you can't eat bacon. Go ahead and eat some bacon. But you know, for me, it's really simple. Like it's a healthy diet if you start to do things like you have a breakfast of like eggs with spinach, and then for lunch you can have, you know, a couple burgers without the buns with, you know, you can have that with some, let's say you want to do like a little low carb Greek salad, like some feta, some zucchini or cucumber and some tomatoes, you know, and some even throw on a little bit of balsamic vinegar and some olive oil. And then for dinner, you know, you have some salmon, some roasted asparagus, some cauliflower rice, some, you know, sauteed mushrooms. I mean, that's a healthy diet, you know? Now, you asked me about discipline. And the reason why I didn't quite address it completely is because I just wanted to first make sure that people understood that first month. As far as discipline goes, the main thing that I want people to do, like when I talk to them, is like you need to not focus on what you're missing out on. If you do that, you're gonna hate your life every single day. You
Yeah.
know, if you want, make a list and go head to head. What sucks right now? Okay, I have that 2 p.m. slump. You know, I wake up groggy, and then when I go to bed, I'm tired and wired. I got somehow my cortisol levels are inverted, where you know it's the opposite of what it needs to be. You know, I can't trust my hunger. I got aches and pains. Start to understand that our bodies are created to be pretty darn resilient, and aging like is not a cause of all these things. I'm 40 years old and I could still freaking sprint. I could still lift heavy and do a bunch of stuff. So now when you start to, even like Maura used to say, because when Maura, my wife, I told her I'm thinking of doing this keto diet, and then we were talking about it. She's like, "Wait, no cheating? What do you mean no cheating?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just think that's probably not a good idea to do to do cheating, at least for a while."
Yeah.
And she's like, "That doesn't make sense." And then when she just did it, literally like 3 or 4 days in, the desire started to go down. So now she tells people, look, just do it. And a lot of people come for the weight loss and then they stay for everything else, because the ketones, when they start to really, you start to generate those ketones, and even more when you start to use them, it changes things. And then the crazy thing is, with the brain power and the increased productivity, you start to, number one, you start to, that in and of itself, you can have these insights that you never had before. Like all of a sudden it's extending into everything in your life. Like the first talk I ever did in front of an audience was in 2017, about a year after doing this diet. And I titled the talk, "Keto Turned Me into Superman," because it was like, I had my best year of sales. I had like a 10 to 15% increase in productivity, where if you're a salesperson and it's 3:30 p.m. and you're still like an hour away from home, you're trying to think like, should I make that last call? Should I not? Every single time I did, because I had that energy, so
Yeah.
it's really cumulative, the effect of it. So that's basically it. Really start to try to think of it as what you're gaining versus what you're missing out on.
Yeah. And I love the fact that, like, I think a lot of people hear keto and just kind of what we alluded to, right? Pounds of bacon.
Yeah.
And people think meat. Now, obviously, you lean carnivore. There's times where
Yeah.
you're straight carnivore, but you also mentioned, spinach and cauliflower rice and whatever other types of vegetables you can throw in there. And really, that is the healthy diet, right? But then Americans have just completely bastardized the whole entire everything that we eat, right? Like everything's processed, everything's sugar, everything's whatever. And it's really about taking it back to like a grassroots thing. So a two-part question for you. One, is keto for everybody?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And two, if not, what is something people can look to? Because I know like paleo exists, which is kind of similar, but not. So like if keto is not for everybody, what else should people look at for themselves?
Okay. First of all, before, I just want to say one more thing. Like, if you look at it like this, I'm going to do this diet and I'm just going to love my life and just this hedonistic way of doing things, that's wrong. Because especially if you don't like the way you look, you don't like the way you feel, there's going to be a little bit of suffering. So I just want to, before I answer, so is keto for everybody? No diet is for everybody, first of all. In the absence of something like, there's a company, for example, called the Piron that does like they map your genetics, and they're awesome because they can start to, based on all of the interactions between all the unique genetic mutations that you have, they can tell you shouldn't have a lot of saturated fat. So don't, stay away from the ribeyes, maybe have the leaner meats, and stay away from the butter and the lard, and opt for like olive oil. So in the absence of that, then I would say, well, that's cool. You don't need to do something like that. It could be kind of pricey. Then I would say do what I've done, which I've done this, even though I have gotten all this crap, I still love to experiment. I think everybody should try this diet. And if you're thinking of a time when to do it, we're still in that time. I would say the best time of the year, this is just based on what I know about, women, for example, they have much more complicated cycles. We have, everybody has seasonal cycles, like our gut microbiome changes with the seasons, so in the summer, we're able to handle more carbs, we're outside more, we're absorbing more vitamin D. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Of course, with the globalization of food, you can basically be in the spring all year round because you can just have stuff flown in. But that being said, if you want to try to, I'm a big fan of the whole idea, because it started for me with paleo like back in 2011. So I'm a big fan of really trying to get back to this without, I hate these, like there's always like these these red herrings and these like caricatures of like these diets, like eat like a caveman. That's not how they ate. Okay, let's get back to traditional eating. Okay, that's what all I'm saying.
Yep.
Even thinking about your genetics, like if you are someone who's from Northern Europe, you're probably going to be able to handle more fat. You're probably going to do better with a low carb diet. If you're someone who is Caribbean, like I'm Cuban, if you're Jamaican, a lot of those people are going to do much better with lots of fruit and stuff because they that's what they had access to. That being said, is keto for everybody? Like I said, it's probably not for everybody, but I think especially the older that you get. So I would say, and that this is probably shifting younger and younger, unfortunately, because of the toxic soup of
Yeah.
things that we're exposed to. We're getting less and less healthy. And also, we're getting less and less insulin sensitive. And that's a big deal because metabolic, right now in this country, as of 2018, there was a study that came out. There's only 12% of people who would be considered metabolically healthy. 88% of people have some sort of metabolic derangement. That's crazy.
That is
And a lot
insane.
of the diseases that we have are metabolic. They're if you don't have a healthy metabolism, if you're because fat is where a lot of these hormones get out of whack. It's stored there. So definitely I would give it a try. And if you were to give it a try, I would say the winter is the best time because traditionally that's when we had less access to fruits, vegetables, things that they just wouldn't grow when it's really cold. That being said, Paleo is an awesome, awesome way to start. What I love about Paleo, the main thing is the fact that it focuses on quality of food. So it gets you away from the boxed stuff. It gets you
Yeah.
away from most people don't do well with dairy. I would say though that if you were to, if even if you have lactose intolerance, you'd be really surprised what would happen if you tried raw dairy. They've actually done surveys of people that had lactose intolerance, and in this one study, in this one survey, it was about 70 or 80% of them that were lactose intolerant. They were able to completely handle raw milk, raw dairy, and that's because like pasteurization and homogenization just destroys the milk, and then they put crap back into it. So they'll fortify these things with vitamins that our bodies are not even assimilating, instead of having all the stuff that nature naturally gives you. So there's that. There's the fact that it's gonna ask you to eat, even if you're eating a ton of fruits and vegetables, a ton of fruits. That sugar is nowhere near as bad as like processed sugars,
Right.
processed grains, which is literally like if you'd be dude, this is so crazy. Like the macro ratios that we eat, like the way that our food is constituted, like our meals are literally a mirror image of the rat chow that they give to rats when they try to fatten them up for a study. Like if
Jeez.
you like it's low protein, it's high carb, and it's the fat is not even that high, but you have low protein. So what does that do? Less lean body mass, less satiety because protein helps you feel full. Also less what's the other thing? Less of a thermic effect because protein has you burn the most calories when your body's trying to break down protein. That's why if there's one thing that you can say, oh, it's okay that I ate too much of this, it's protein. Like they've done
Hmm.
protein overfeeding studies where they've given people like 500 calories a day extra of just protein, no weight gain. It's crazy. So,
Wow.
so what I would say about the paleo diet is don't do the American thing. Don't do that thing that we love to do. That's like, okay, I'm paleo. And it's like you're eating all these things that are labeled paleo. So you're like chugging agave nectar. It's like, think about agave, how hard it was to get that like from a cactus plant. Like think about those like, that pound of nuts that you just ate, like how hard it was to find nuts. These are
Yep.
indulgences. These are things. So regardless, whatever you try, there's has to be, like you said from the beginning, there has to be a level of discipline. And
Yeah, think of the source.
yeah, think of the source, and there has to also be a little bit of, discipline as far as the portions, because in this country our plates are 3 inches bigger in diameter than they are in Europe, for example. Like in Europe, they have 8-inch plates. We have 11-inch plates.
Yeah.
So portion control is a thing too. Um, So yeah, I would say definitely a lot of people go, they start the paleo route, then they find themselves doing keto. They might even find themselves doing carnivore for a little bit. I find that to be a fantastic thing for people who want to do like a detox, who want to do some sort of elimination diet. Most of the time, especially with beef, and this is from talking to all types of NTPs and RDs that deal with food sensitivities. Most of the time, beef is never on that list of things that people are sensitive to. So you can get rid of lots of stuff, and then when your gut heals itself, all of a sudden, weird, you're not allergic, or you're not. I don't want to say allergic because allergies can probably be, you know, most of the time they're permanent. But you have these food sensitivities that you have a healthy gut lining, you have a healthy gut, now you can eat them again.
Yep.
So just something to think about.
No, dude, I love it. And I love the fact that you've been able to take your family and bring them along with you, right? You had said before I hit record that you eat organ meat burgers. That to me sounds absolutely terrible. And I'm sure you love them.
Yeah.
So obviously, now was that real quick? Was that an acquired taste for you? Did you like the first immediate you were like, ugh?
Yeah, I have this thing though that my wife makes fun of me that like if I know that something's healthy, it automatically becomes tastier.
Yeah, yeah.
So my oldest is like that. But no, with the organ meat burgers, the trick to that, dude, was like grinding in the bacon, you know, like, and that's why I feed organ burgers to everybody, like all the time. Like if I'm doing a bunch, and kids, they always love them. And then like if they don't know before, you tell them after, and most
Yeah.
of the time they're like they don't know what to do because they just ate it and they loved it.
Yeah. And they don't
But
want to
yeah,
admit it, man. We've got an 11
yeah,
and 8-year-old in our house, and there's no way in hell they would admit that they liked it afterwards. And then they
it's
would
a
never
big
trust us
difference.
again.
Eating liver on its own is most people can't do that. You know, it's just the texture, the
Yeah.
taste of it, and plus you got to really cook it the right way. If you overcook it, it's like eating the sole of a shoe. So I mean, there's lots of stuff. And then kidney, don't even get me started with kidney. There's lots of it smells
Ugh.
like urine. So it's not the best thing. But there's
Nope.
like kidney has natural enzymes in it that are antihistamine. So like it's amazing what if you change the way you look at health, you can find things in your food, and that's really the biggest goal for the kids. Is like I don't care if they go to the hot and ready sign the minute they leave my house, you know. And plus, I don't have like very strict things. We have non-negotiables, and then when they make money, if they want to get themselves crap, I'm not going to pay for it most of the time. But what I do want them to walk away with is the fact that like when something goes wrong, they're not going to automatically um, fall into that algorithm of go to the doctor, get prescribed something, and then go
Mm.
down that whole rabbit hole where it just gets worse and worse over time.
You're teaching them a way to think for themselves. You're teaching them a
Yeah.
way to kind of really go, okay, well, what's actually going on here, instead of them relying on, for lack of a better term, the system, which I love, right? And now obviously
Yeah.
you've come out with a children's book that begins this process at a young age. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I'm in love with the fact that you've done this, again, starting in your home and then seeing an opportunity and saying, hey, let's spread this knowledge to everybody. Talk a little bit about that book.
Oh, dude, the book's awesome. It started with my buddy who called me, and it was like 2 or 3 calls. He was asking me for advice because he knew that I read to my boys, and like I got like most books that come out for kids that are like have any value, like I'm buying them, you know?
Yeah.
And he was like, I had this idea of taking like personal development books and turning them into kids' storybooks. And he's like, do you know of anything that exists like that? I'm like, no. You know, there's like the Tuttle Twins, but the Tuttle Twins is like philosophy and economics, and they turn them into storybooks.
Right.
So I started giving him some advice. After the second or third call, he was like, do you want to write this with me? And I was like, dude, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, dude, we started to write it, and of course, it was so funny because we both wanted to start with how to win friends and influence people. And what a good time for all of that, man, because you know, our society just doesn't know how to have difficult conversations. They don't know how to give constructive criticism or take it. They don't
Yeah.
know the value of like looking someone in the eye, remembering their name, remembering important things about them, like their birthdays, you know, disagreeing agreeably, and just knowing how to influence people without manipulating them and all those things. So that book was so freaking fun to write, man. Like, number one, we basically took the principles in the book and we used not only the protagonists to tell like we had like a mentor guy that he was kind of giving him a lot, but then sometimes the friends would do it, and then a lot of the time the antagonist would be showing you exactly what not to do.
Yeah.
And we had like it was a mission to find an illustrator for the cover. And finally, when we found the right one, she did something really cool. Like if you look at the cover, all the bad guys have really small ears and the good guys have like kind of bigger ears. So it's like all
Smart.
about that concept, listen more, listen and talk less, or at least seek to understand before you say things. So we wrote that. The book came out awesome. It's the first in a series. And we worked on a workbook because, of course, there's a lot of kids are going to be going to school. Their parents are not going to be homeschooling them,
Yeah.
and we wanted the parents to be engaged. So there's like every chapter, there's something that you can look at the finer points of the chapter, the takeaways. I did a crossword puzzle, a word search, Mad Libs, a maze. But then my partner Adrian did this awesome thing. It's like this checklist that's at the end of the workbook where if the kids can buy into this, man, I will be so happy. Because think about the value of something like this where you have this list of, let's say it's like 20 items, and you can try one a week or a few a week, and you like one of them is like, find 3 people today and learn their birthdays,
Mm.
or today find someone at school who seems to be like a loner and start asking them things about themselves, and then come share it with your parents. Those things, dude. Like, think about that. I know I did. Like, I read that book after grad school. Like, I was going into the business world, and I wanted to like really be able to network better and stuff. Bottom line, I don't care if you're an accountant, I don't care if you're a line worker. Well, those barely exist anymore, but like, it doesn't matter what you do. You have to learn how to deal with people, and you have to know how to do that, and
Yeah.
now more than ever. So yeah, man, that was a lot of fun.
Dude, I love those activities for kids, because I met with a guy yesterday from a bank. We met for coffee. He reached out randomly. He's like, "I love what you're doing. Let's meet up." And I was like, "Okay, I got nothing else going on." And
Yeah.
so grabbed a coffee, and we were talking about, he has 6 kids, all under the age of 11,
Wow.
and him and his wife were thinking, like, they were talking about moving, and he's like, kids don't really care if you move anymore, because they don't really have those friendships that we had when we were kids. Because
That's
of
crazy.
screens and
Yeah.
social media, the idea of true human connection and diving deep and understanding somebody for who they are doesn't exist anymore, because it doesn't need to exist anymore. And so it was an intriguing conversation, and to lead to the idea, like, hey, approach somebody and ask them what their birthday is. Don't forget what it is, right? Go up to the kid who's a loner and ask him what's going on and learn about him. That changes the game, because it gets a kid out of their comfort zone, which is a screen, and
Yeah.
has them really start to engage. And I think that's the only way we can save this next generation, which I'm really worried about, by the way.
Dude, me
That was
too.
part of our morning walk conversation, me and my girlfriend. I'm like, I'm a little worried about this next generation and what's happening. So I'm glad you're doing that, man. So where can people get that book?
Yeah, if they go to, so the name of the series is Unexplainable Adventures. This one's called The Power of Influence. So if they go to unexplainableadventures.com, they can go through the website. They can go on Amazon. There's a Kindle version. There's a paperback version, and there's also an audiobook, which my partner did, and it's got some it's even got sound effects and stuff. So like, if you're in the car taking the kids to school,
That's
or
cool.
just like on a road trip, you can listen to the audio version, and that'll be good. Because like, I think it's, no matter what, dude, this is not something that you throw at your kid and say, "Here, read this." Like, you got to be invested as a parent, period. If
Yeah.
there's one thing I got to tell parents, man, like, we have to be, for me, it's just so important for us to, because I was told way before I had children about how time flies, and like, number one, granted, we're gonna leave them with some sort of neuroses. Like, that's just gonna happen, you
Yep.
know? So like, the goal is to like, as little neuroses as
Yeah.
possible.
Limit it as much as possible.
Yeah.
You're going to
You
have to
know,
talk to a therapist. I just hope
yeah.
you don't have to feel like you have to go there every day.
Yeah,
That's the goal.
exactly. Yeah. So that's just being there is so huge, like just spending just a little bit of time with them. And it's got to be more than how was school, because they're going to get so sick of that. They're just going to say, "Yeah, it was good. Anything new?" No. I mean, no, it's got to be like, even just having a little bit more intentionality, like, what was the most challenging thing you went through today? What was the best part of your day? And then like now you can even be like, now you're the problem solver, and it's like, okay, so what can we do to fix that? Like, do you like the way you reacted to that? Is there something that you can change? Now you're getting them to talk more, but it's gotta be, if you're a salesperson, understand, like, take those things that you learn for sales where you're trying to uncover needs and apply it to your kids.
Yeah, dude, I love that. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to ask you a question that I ask every guest on the show. It's a two-part question. The first part is, what is your definition of success? And the second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Oh man, I actually was asked this when we have these like when I won like the sales award, like the Pinnacle Award. They made a deck of Uno cards, and I would say that at a simple level, this is just now off the top of my head because I don't even remember what the heck I said. Um, oh, actually, I remember now. So what I said was being the best version of yourself every day. But I think just a little bit more in depth, success is, accomplishing the right goals. So like, if you, number one, it starts with goal setting, but number two, you really have to understand what your goals mean. Are your goals aligned with who you are? And then succeeding would be like accomplishing those really well aligned goals. How do I do that? Three things I do every day. Um, Number one, really important, morning routine. Wake up pretty much. I wake up and go to sleep at the same time, Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday. My thing now, actually, it's Friday and Saturday. Friday and Saturday, I give myself till midnight, and then it's off, because you could find yourself on a computer or watching the TV way past midnight.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I don't even get to that point. Really try to kind of unify keep the times I wake up and go to sleep really regular. Number two, let's see, morning routine. I do planning, so I guess that's part of the morning routine. Number two is just relationships. There's built-in routines that we have with our family that really help, our relationships. So that's the second one. The third one, this is simple because I do this every day. I'm just recommending it, is you want to get up out of a chair every single day. You want to, whether it's walking, go outside in the sun if it's hot enough, and stay away from just sitting in a chair. That's where you die slowly. Like, if you just walk, it doesn't matter what diet you do. This has been shown in the research, brain and heart benefits across the board for every single type of diet if you just walk a little bit every day. So get up, move, and even move throughout the day. Like, if you're sitting in a chair, put an alarm for like every 90 minutes to get up and walk around for 10 minutes. And it's amazing what you can do with that.
Yeah, that's so true, man. And we talked before I hit record. We're both doing 75 hard right now. You're in a different phase than I am, where I'm redoing the 75 days like I did last year. And that morning walk is something that we kept forever because of how quickly that shifts your mindset for the remainder of the day. To get up and move your body, to feel accomplished, to be able to do all those things that you want to do, to stay strong, to make it easier for your knees and all your joints to keep moving, man. Because we're not getting any younger. Like you said, you're 40, I'm 37. And it's one of those things where I really want to focus on like this long-term idea. I went to an event last night, a local buddy of mine who wrote a book, and he's 70 years old, and he writes a weekly blog. And so this book came out of the blog and et cetera. And he talked about the back nine and how he's on the back nine of his life. And like, I got emotional as he was reading this excerpt from the book, because I'm like, shit, like, I'm not on the back nine yet, but the whole thing was talking about how like you're going to be on the back nine before you know it. Yeah, and so I'd rather have a really, really strong back nine than I do, even than a front nine. And so you do that by setting yourself up. So moving your body is so, so key. So before I get to the last question, how do people get a hold of you? Where do they get more information other than coming to Growth Now Summit Live and hearing you on the stage and then being able to connect with you and hang out with you that weekend? Where else can they go?
So two main places is fatfueled.family is our website. That's where they can, either email me, send a consult, schedule a consult, sign up for coaching, group coaching. And then Instagram is where most of the time you'll see me. I'm most active on Instagram, dannyvega.ms.
Awesome. So we'll link all that stuff up, man. But like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. And that is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Oof, I think I'm still in the middle of it, dude. I mean, there was lots of moments, but they change when the challenge is more. So I went through depression last year for the first time in my life, and so the moment. It's interesting that November 3rd is the day that I just was like, enough, and I made these major changes. But if I look back, 75 hard was one of those things. There was a lot of work that I had to do to even prepare myself to make that change. And so like most of the time we'll see people like one of my favorite entrepreneurs is like, I'm a 23-year overnight success, because it's like so much work that you have to do. And it's okay. Like if you're going through it, like there's going to be like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 step forward, 2 step back. But eventually you may gain enough momentum to where, you have that breakthrough. And that's what I had, man. Like November 3rd, it's crazy. It feels like it was just yesterday, relatively close, like 2 months ago. But it was literally like 11 months of work to get to that point. When I probably started to be depressed in August of 2020, I didn't notice until December. And now in December, I notice. And now I'm like, okay, now what? And so now it was several months of like, why doesn't this get fixed? I know about it. How do I? And it's like nothing was changing, but I just would start to like put one foot in front of another. Like that's the problem with depression. It's so hard to even move and get going and see people, be around people. I hated it. I didn't answer the phone. So that was definitely the hardest thing, dude. Cause I was like, also cause it's hard to accept that you're not the person that you lie to yourself who you are. like I'm Danny, I'm happy. And it's like, and then I realized that I just hated to feel like I would either be happy or mad. Cause if I got sad or depressed, it always changed into anger. And you can only do that for so long, and you can only push things down and not feel feelings. And I would always be the guy who never cried. And now I'm like, I cry like several times a week. So it's like,
you gotta let it out, man.
Yeah, 100%, dude.
Yeah, dude. I feel it on that one, man. COVID and how it affected the world has certainly affected my mindset. And it's really about when you get to that point, you're like, okay, what do I do to break out of this? And for me, I mean, as much as you don't want to be around people, it's really about surrounding yourself with the right people, having the right conversations, and it's because I've been there, bro, like throughout the last year plus, blah, blah, blah. And it's really about like, okay, and it is always that moment where you go, okay, enough of this shit.
Yeah.
And then you just do drastic things like 75 hard or whatever to break out of it. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. So thank you for sharing that, man. And more importantly, dude, thank you so much for coming on the show, being a part of Growth Now Summit Live in May, which I can't wait for, and just continuing to, make improvements in people's lives for their health and for their family and everything else in between, man. I look forward to having you on the show in the future as well. But dude, this was phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.